Hey guys, today I'll be discussing slash reviewing Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, aka Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the very first book in what is my favorite series of all time, Harry Potter. Reading the books always gives me this cozy feeling, so I've tried to make my space just a little bit cozier than usual, with a very real fire behind me, as you can see, and of course my own very new and very beautiful box set of the Harry Potter books. Now, the Harry Potter series doesn't really need a summary by this point because I feel like everybody knows what it's about, but I'll try my best with a little summary anyway. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone starts off with a baby boy with a lightning scar being dropped off at the front steps of Four Privet Drive by this hodgepodge of magical people. This baby boy is, of course, Harry Potter, and Four Privet Drive is the home of, as now we all know, the Dursleys. Aunt Petunia, Uncle Vernon, and cousin Dudley. From the moment that he is dropped off at his aunt and uncle's house, Harry has to live under their very abusive guidance throughout the years. The long list of abuses include his cousin Dudley beating him up, his Aunt Petunia basically insulting his mom and dad who have died in front of his face, and Uncle Vernon essentially just not giving him meals just because he doesn't want to. It's only the summer that Harry turns 11 that things start to really get strange. In particular, a bunch of owls start delivering mail to Four Privet Drive addressed to Harry, which is odd because Harry never gets mail, no one writes to him. The Dursleys go out of their way to prevent Harry from ever seeing the contents of these letters. However, the sender of the letters is much more determined that Harry read the contents of these mysterious letters from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry than the Dursleys are of preventing Harry from reading it. And ultimately, on his 11th birthday, Harry finally sees what is inside these letters, and he discovers he is a wizard. And not just any wizard, an extraordinary and very famous one in the wizarding world. And thus begins one of the most famous and successful book series of all time. To be clear, this is not the first time I've read the Harry Potter series. I would say that this is maybe my third or fourth time reading Sorcerer's Stone. Every few years or so, I just get this itch to reread the books, to rediscover the magic and the stories, and I like to have enough time elapse between rereads just so I could forget some of the details. I mean, the basic plot I can never forget, but these little whimsical details and side plots and subplots in each of the books, I just like to forget them and then rediscover them every few years or so. I first came into my love of the story through the first film in 2001. I was 8 years old, I was in the third grade, and my class took a field trip to see the first movie in the theaters. And from that moment, I've just been hooked on the story. I can't get enough. I remember begging my mom to buy the next book in the series, and she did. She got me Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban, and yeah, since then, I've just been in love with the stories. Before I dive into my thoughts on Sorcerer's Stone, I do want to say three things. One is that this is definitely a spoiler-filled video, so if you're a reader who has never read the books and you just want to hear spoiler-free content, this is not the video to watch. There are a ton of other videos on YouTube from people who do give spoiler-free reviews of Sorcerer's Stone. This is not going to be that. I do want to talk about, the little details, and I want to be as precise as possible in my dissection of the book. So you're warned, this has spoilers. Number two is that while I love the Harry Potter series, I am also a very critical reader. I do have 2 degrees in English literature, so I do like talking about the things that I appreciate about a book, but I also think it's important and more honest to also point out the things that maybe didn't work as well. Maybe I'm just going to be nitpicky in the end, but these are to be taken lightly. No matter what, I still love these books and Sorcerer's Stone, no matter my opinions in this video. So, sometimes it's just really important to look at a book that you love or that you hate. This is not the case here. I do really love this book, but it is important to have like a more balanced view of whatever content art form you're engaging with. So I hope that, people don't take it too seriously if I like point out some problematic things or maybe things I didn't totally love in this book. And I think most importantly, number 3 is that, I want to make this video because I'm starting a reread of the series. The series has been attached to my life for the past 20 years. I started reading, like I said, when I was 8. I'm 28 now. I just can't really separate like my life and Harry Potter. They're intertwined. With that being said, though, I also don't want to pretend like the whole J.K. Rowling controversy isn't happening. I feel like I see too many Harry Potter fans online just sort of pretend like nothing is going on. I just want to be clear and explicit that I absolutely denounce everything that J.K. Rowling has said in regards to her egregious transphobia. I've been, like many, just very shocked and confused and disappointed and offended, etc., by what J.K. Rowling has said since around 2019, I think. It just doesn't, I can't reconcile who she has become or who she has shown herself to be from the person that I thought I knew prior to 2019, like the person who created the series. So, I'll admit it has been a little bit hard for me to separate art and artist. I think this is an instance where, for the time being, I will have to, but I did just want to, talk about this just a little bit before I actually do my review because, like I said, I do see a lot of people, a lot of fans online just not even mention it. They're just sort of talking about Harry Potter like as if nothing is going on. And I don't want an action on my part to be misread as like my acceptance of what J.K. Rowling is saying. And I also don't want this video coming out at this time to be seen as like also me just being okay with what she's saying. So I did just want to say that in the beginning. This is a process for me. Yeah, I still love the series, but it's almost like I don't know. I'm not ashamed of still liking it, but there is still like this hesitation now whenever I feel like I want to share my my love for the series just because of J.K. Rowling's shadow, I think, now on the entire wizarding world. So yeah, definitely against everything that she has said. Alrighty, so now I will finally get to the review portion of the video. You don't have to wait any longer. So I will start right out by saying that Sorcerer's Stone has never been my favorite in the series. I think because I've already mentioned this, but I was introduced to Harry Potter through the movie, and then right after seeing the movie, I jumped right into the book, the second book, the third book, and I never picked up Sorcerer's Stone, the book, until like right before Order of the Phoenix was about to come out. So I think I was just maybe a little bit older, still young, but just a little bit older, and maybe this childlike, innocent voice that permeates Sorcerer's Stone didn't hit me as much as it did other people. This is definitely a favorite because this is the one that introduces all the magic. Like, I sort of wish I had read it first, just because it would have been such a wonderful experience. With that being said, I still really love Sorcerer's Stone. It is so sweet and whimsical and imaginative, and it has a dose of adventure, and it just, I don't know anybody who reads this book and doesn't wish that they were also going to Hogwarts and that they also got their letters in the mail and that they could ride the Hogwarts Express. It's so atmospheric and yeah, just a fun read. I would say it's maybe not, of the seven books, maybe it's not the most complex in terms of plot. It's definitely driven more by world building because it's the first one. It has to establish the main, plot points, the settings, the characters that will be involved in the entire series. And it's also more concerned with the buildup of the friendship between Harry and Ron and later Hermione. And one thing that I have always loved about the books that shines in this first one is the humor in it. I've pulled down my very beautiful edition of Sorcerer's Stone just to read some quotes that I thought were funny. So in my edition, this is on page 77, and this is the part where Harry meets Draco when he's getting fitted for his robes, and Draco is just bombarding him with all these questions about Hogwarts, and Harry doesn't know the answer to any of them, and he's starting to feel stupider and stupider by the question. And finally, Draco asks him, do you know what house you'll be in yet? And once again, Harry says no, because he has no idea what houses are. He doesn't know anything. And so Draco responds, well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Now, the Hufflepuff slander is definitely prevalent in this book, if not inherently in all of them. I don't want to start off immediately with my nitpicks, but that is one thing. Gryffindor is preferred. It's biased. The books are biased for Gryffindor than any other house throughout the series. Definitely in book one. But all the Hufflepuff slander is, while discriminatory, pretty hilarious. And then there's another one, again with the Hufflepuff slander, when Harry and Hagrid are in the Leaky Cauldron in Diagon Alley. And this is right after the scene that I just read, where Draco and Harry are getting fitted for their robes. And so when Harry goes to see Hagrid, he asked him about, what was Draco talking about? What is Slytherin? What is Hufflepuff? And Hagrid responds, schoolhouses. There's four. Everyone says Hufflepuff are a lot of duffers, but I bet I'm in Hufflepuff, said Harry gloomily. So it is playing on the stereotype. It's wrong, but secretly kind of funny. And then there's another, what I think, very funny moment. This one includes Neville, one of my favorite characters in the entire series. Here he's explaining how his magical powers didn't really show up until a little bit later than everybody else. He was kind of a late bloomer. And so he tells, I think everyone is in the scene, Ron, Seamus, Harry. And so he says, great Uncle Algie came around for dinner, and he was hanging me out of an upstairs window by the ankles when my great Aunt Enid offered him a meringue, and he accidentally let go. But I bounced all the way down the garden and into the road. They were all really pleased. Gran was crying. She was so happy. So, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of this sort of witty, clever, I would say even subtle humor throughout the series that is, I think, mastered the further you get into the series, but it's definitely present and it shines in the first one. And speaking of Neville, he is by far one of my favorite characters in the entire series. It's Neville and Hagrid, I think, my top two. I think Sorcerer's Stone does an excellent job of showing us just how humble and how pure of heart both Neville and Hagrid are. Neville in particular, his story I've always resonated with because, well, actually him and Hagrid, they're both underestimated by everybody around them. Neville in particular is underestimated by everybody because he sort of goofs in class. He doesn't perform his best, and I feel like he never really reaches his true potential because he's just constantly aware of how other people think that he's weird, think that he's a loser, and he has no confidence basically. So that side of his character like has always resonated with me too, because you know I I didn't really find myself being the most confident at his age either, or really even today, but definitely not when I was 11 like Neville. And then in terms of why I love Hagrid, it's for similar reasons. Like he's also underestimated for, I mean, his background. Now this is also something that I could relate to because Hagrid was judged by his physical appearance. You know, other people would presume things about his intelligence, his manner, the way he spoke, just by what he looked like. He's a half giant. So people just made all these negative judgments without even really getting to know him. So, of course, I also related to that too. But what I love about Hagrid is that, you know, he's aware that other people judge him, but he sort of like doesn't care. He has the confidence that I think Neville needs more of. He's just himself. He loves dragons and he talks about dragons. He loves, you know, Fluffy, and yeah, people think it's weird, but he knows that three-headed dogs are really lovable. So he's just fully himself all the time, and I mean, I can't help but just love that. And sort of wish I had that too, like had more confidence to be weird and silly in front of people and not care. So yeah, so there's much to admire about Neville and Hagrid. Some other things that I do really appreciate about Sorcerer's Stone, one is, and this is something I guess that you would know if you finish the series, but I just love how much went into the world building here. I mean, it's a lot of imagination stuffed into just a very short book. And it's just all so wondrous. You know, the little details, again, I'm looking at my own copy. This is on page 71 when Harry's first going to Diagon Alley. Just the little details of like the cauldrons. They come in all sizes: copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, and collapsible. Like, of course they would. Like, it's these just cute little details that surround like everything in the wizarding world. And admittedly, with this reread, I was a little bit nervous that, you know, because I have read the series I don't know how many times, I was worried that maybe I wouldn't feel that those butterflies in my stomach, that excitement for the magical worlds. Like, I thought, oh God, maybe I've gotten to that age where like this stuff doesn't make me want to be in Hogwarts anymore. Have I reached that age? And in the beginning, I was a little bit nervous because in the section where Harry is still with the Dursleys, I wasn't feeling those feelings again, and I was really worried, like, oh, maybe it was too soon to reread this. Maybe I still needed like another 2 years, because the last time I reread it was in 2017. But I swear, as soon as Harry goes to Diagon Alley, as soon as, you know, we are on the Hogwarts Express, and then he's not choosing, but he's in his Hogwarts classes and going to Quidditch, like, it was all back. I felt that the charm, the magic. Oh, and this is the first time that I've read the series with an audiobook. I did want to mention that I was listening to the Jim Dale narrated version as I was physically reading. I'm finding that helps me concentrate a little bit more. Not that I really needed for Harry Potter, but it just enhanced the reading experience by, like, I don't even know, a multitude. I mean, Jim Dale's just does such a good job with all the voices, some more than others. I also noticed that like Seamus, to my ear, wasn't Irish in the Jim Dale narration. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was before it was specified that he's supposed to be Irish. Yeah, but it totally enhances the experience. So I do recommend you grab a copy of an audiobook for this series. I heard the Stephen Fry one is good. I have no access to it. I would like to maybe compare and contrast, but for the moment, the Jim Dale versions will do. I also love how much planning went into the series and all the little clues that are sort of dropped in Sorcerer's Stone that don't mean anything until you read on further. I hate to keep talking about the whole series. I keep doing that, but in my mind, they're all connected at this point. But in Sorcerer's Stone, you do get mention of, I never know how to pronounce this. I think it's Bezor. Jim Dale says like Beshwa, which again, I guess at the time, no pronunciation was really confirmed for him. So it may be unfair to judge that pronunciation, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not Beshwa. But yeah, they mention Bezor, whatever it is, however it's pronounced. There's Gringotts, obviously, which will play a big role later on. Of course, Harry's chocolate frog, that he gets the Dumbledore card, and on there we learn about Nicholas Flamel and also Grindelwald, the big battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald in 1945, which now with the Fantastic Beasts movie is basically a huge plot in the wizarding world. We also have this line on page 221. Harry didn't see how he could, yet he sometimes had the horrible feeling that Snape could read minds. Foreshadowing to future events. You also have Dumbledore hinting about the prophecy that will be revealed to Harry later on. He tells Harry that, he won't tell him now, but one day he'll know why Voldemort chose him. You have another foreshadow on page 260 where Ron and pretty much everybody is afraid of saying Voldemort's name. And it says, that Ron said, stop saying his name, as if he thought Voldemort could hear them. Again, sort of a foreshadow to future events, which I thought it's just always so clever and impressive to me how much thought went into the series from the very beginning. It's not like the plot came along the way. Everything was planned and choreographed. There was like an architecture framing the entire storyline from Sorcerer's Stone. There are just a lot of other sort of foreshadows and little drops of information in book one. I don't want to go overboard, but just to add just a few more, you do have a mention of werewolves, also important later on. You have the dragons, of course. I'll get more into the dragons in a bit because I actually have a lot to say and maybe the more negative thoughts on the book, but dragons are introduced, will play a role later on in the series. And finally, scabbers. Just a few other things that I appreciated. I liked how metaphors and figurative language was used in the book. There was the idea that Lily Potter's love left a mark on Harry. Like, usually we use that sort of sentiment figuratively, like love leaves an impression on us, love marks us for life. But I think it's really clever that the book made it literal. It wasn't just an emotional or psychological impression. It was like a physical blanket of protection for Harry. I think it's just, really clever, a clever message to send to kids that, it's not just this figurative, emotional thing, in the realm of feelings. It's actually a physical, tangible thing that can protect you. It's valuable and important to cherish love above all things because it can protect you in the end. And I just think it's a special message in a children's book. It really makes you think. And I think the last thing I'm going to say, not because there aren't more positive things, but because I don't want this video to be even longer than it is. But I, kind of going along the lines of how this book does a really good job of making more adult lessons and things accessible to children. I really liked how the book isn't afraid to explore things like classism in the Wizarding world. It's sort of, I think, from Sorcerer's Stone. Yes, it's fun. Yes, it's light. It's adventurous. It has all of these elements that play well to maybe a middle grade audience, a more children's audience, that kind of demographic. It's not afraid to, you know, imbue certain moments with maybe heavier themes. They're more lightly introduced in this book, but they're there. So, like I said, this idea of classism, of discrimination in the wizarding world, that it almost seems inevitable, sadly, for any society to find a way to divide people into like inferior and superior in whatever way makes people feel better about themselves, basically. So you have that with the Muggles and the wizarding world, and then you also have that with the pure blood elitism and anybody who is not pure blood, basically. And you even have that explored through rich and poor. You know, you have Ron, who, by maybe the standards of pure blood elitists like the Malfoys, would actually have the advantage, but because he's poor, he's seen as inferior by people like them. So, like, it's almost inevitable for people to just constantly try to make other people feel like they're less than they are. It's sad, but I think unfortunately it's pretty realistic. And I think, yeah, in a children's book, these are really important, big lessons. And yeah, I think it's smart to have kids think about these kinds of things at maybe an early age. And even adults start reading the Harry Potter books as adults, and they too can learn something from it. And I think that's what makes middle grade books stand out amongst the rest, when they don't just appeal to one age demographic. They sort of can appeal more broadly to everyone of all ages. Yeah, that's definitely a positive for Sorcerer's Stone and the series at large. Okay, now onto my criticisms. Again, this is to be taken lightly in jest. I'm not seriously angry about any of these things. These are just small details. Well, one of them is maybe not so small, but you know, none of these have clouded my impression of the series. I love the series, so please, this is just a light little criticism, just me being nitpicky, basically. Okay, firstly, Norbert the dragon is completely unnecessary to the story. I think if I put my writer's cap on, I can sort of see why it would be included here. It, you know, adds another element of adventure, another element to the world building. You know, it establishes that yes, this world uses dragons, tames dragons. Again, it's sort of dropping something here that will be used later on in the series, and it does in book 4, Goblet of Fire. Like, I get it, but also the entire subplot of hatching Norbert and then Quirrel, you know, giving Hagrid the dragon egg because he wanted to get him drunk to get information about how to get to the Sorcerer's Stone, is just a little bit convoluted. Like, you really don't need the dragon. I feel like there are just easier ways to have gone from point A to point B. And again, like, I get it. It's more adventure, but kind of unnecessary. Speaking of Quirrell, I've never liked him. You're not supposed to like him, but even as a villain, he's kind of lame. I don't know, like, he's barely in the story, really. I don't see why he even needed to stutter. I feel like the implications of that could be read as problematic. I don't know. He's just so boring to me. I don't know. And the turban, another thing that, I don't know, could be seen as problematic. Just even without that element, is too convenient. Like, I understand, again, if I put a writer's cap on, why you would need something to cover up the fact that this character has Voldemort in the back of his head. I get it, but also, was the turban like the most plausible thing that one could come up with to just to cover that up? I don't know. I feel like surely there are other things like hair. Like, did he have to be bald? I don't know. Like, he a wig. Maybe do they wear wigs in the wizarding world? I don't know, but like, surely, surely the turban didn't have to happen. And also, it includes Quirrell, but also goes back to the dragon bit. Okay, like I never want anything bad to happen to Hagrid and stuff. He's, the love of my life. I love Hagrid. But wasn't there an easier way of trying to get him to tell Quirrell about how to get the Sorcerer's Stone than this whole, like I said, convoluted thing with a dragon and getting Hagrid drunk? I mean, this is the wizarding world, for crying out loud. Like, again, I don't want anything bad to happen to Hagrid, but I mean, the unspeakable curses do exist. Like, a little Veritaserum, like, why? Why? There are just easier, more plausible ways of getting this information. And Quirrell is, a follower of Voldemort, so it's not like something like the unspeakable curses would be against his ethics or moral code. He's kind of an awful but lame, boring character. But like, I don't know, getting Hagrid drunk, was that, it just seems a little convoluted and convenient. But again, it's a kid's story, it's supposed to be fun. So I feel like this is just something that still bothers me to this day. And something else that sort of annoys me and that I'm a little bit confused about is, so at the end when Dumbledore is rudely changing the award ceremony for the House Cup, originally it's supposed to be going to Slytherin, but then he does this whole thing where he awards Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville the most convenient and precise points that they need, that Gryffindor needs to beat Slytherin. That whole scene, I'm always confused, like, how did Dumbledore know what Neville did? Like, he wasn't in the Gryffindor common room. Like, I know he can become invisible, but like, was he supposed to be invisible, just like sneaking up on the kids? I don't know. If anybody knows maybe why or how Dumbledore knows this, please let me know in the comments. I think maybe we're just supposed to take it for granted that he's the best wizard of all time, the wisest, person ever. And, if he knows something, that, oh, he knows something, it's because he's Dumbledore, he knows everything. But should he know everything? Like, how does he know that he's not there? And something else that I think is just a little weak, not, glaringly bad, but still a little weak in Sorcerer's Stone, is the structure of the book. So basically, let me see, it's until I think 262. All of this, you see, all of this is world building. And you get like little clues that strange things are happening, and the characters are sort of trying to piece things together but not totally succeeding. And then it's only on page 262 until, well, basically the last 30 pages that the action, the climax, really takes place. And I feel like whenever I read this, it just seems kind of rushed through. None of the obstacles, like, I feel like I wish that they lasted a longer time than they did in written form. I think the movie somehow does a little bit better of a job of depicting these in like a grand fashion, that like it feels like a climax in the movie, whereas the book, it's just like they just get through them so easily. And just like, for me, I love the potions obstacle. I really wish that Hermione just had a little bit more of a moment to shine. Yeah, just like generally, I wish the action was just longer, and maybe that it could have happened earlier. The pacing could have just improved. Yeah, but it's not a bad structure. It's just, it could be improved, and it did improve with the other books. One thing that is established in Sorcerer's Stone that I kind of think is kind of funny, I'm being nitpicky again, is that the the trio, Harry, Ron, Hermione, always like seem to battle evil on the academic calendar. Like all the confrontations, all the clashes happen like at the end of the school year. And again, putting my writer's cap on, I can see why it's necessary because you have to utilize the school setting somehow, right? It's not like you're going to have the story set in Hogwarts, this magical place, and then just have the climax happen in September and then leave the story, like end the story there. So, like, obviously, I know why it has to happen because you want to explore, you know, what happens in this world during Halloween and Christmas and how things are decorated and all the classes and how the students do. So, like, I get it, but I always thought it was kind of funny. Like, the villains are just waiting until May for, you know, to come out and do evil and wreak havoc across the world. So, yeah, it happens in pretty much every book except the last. No, I think no, the battle does happen in May. So yeah, it happens in all the books. Just a funny thing that I've always noticed that kind of makes me giggle a little bit. So those were all of my thoughts on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Please let me know if you like this video, what you think about what I've said. Do you vehemently agree or disagree? Please let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say and make this a discussion. And I hope no one got offended with anything I said. I truly love the series, especially the first book. It's not my favorite in the series, but it's still a wonderful, fun time. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you so choose. And yeah, I'll see you in my Chamber of Secrets review coming maybe in the next week or two. So thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye!